note for those of you joining us on the live stream this afternoon that we were having technical difficulties this morning, but we did record the full session. And so if you were unable to see the morning session, it will be available on YouTube after this. So you can feel free to tune back in there, but this afternoon will be live streamed. So with that, we are going to jump back into the agenda. And I'm going to invite Fazal Khan to lead us through divesting exams.
Okay, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the briefing note in their package. I'll just do a high-level overview for the board and for any people joining us online. So by way of background, this is an informational piece only right now. The college admin team is considering divesting itself of most of the administrative functions of the registration exams, which we are now holding about 3 per year. So I'll give a bit of background and kind of add some context to what that all means. So prior to 2006, the College of Opticians, or the Board of Ophthalmic Dispensers, prior to that, completely in-house ran the exams. We developed the content of the exams, administered the exams, marked the exams, all of that. We actually had a sort of a very active exams committee. And so that's how the exams ran for years and years. There was often a lot of debate over concern that candidates and educators, the candidates and educators were raising about the content of the exam, the questions that were being asked as far as their validity, and also some vagueness in what might be covered on the exam. And I'll circle back to that in a moment. Back in 2002, the Mutual Recognition Agreement, which I'll refer to as MRA, came into effect. That was there to facilitate healthcare workers moving back and forth across the country. And when that came into place, there was discussion by all the regulators at a national level, optician regulators, that it probably would be in everyone's best interest to have some degree of consistency as far as what did an optician have to learn to become an entry to practice optician, and how the exam was administered and the content of that exam. So that people weren't shopping province to province looking for, let's say, the lowest bar, registering that province and then porting their license over to another province. Because under the MRA, you're not supposed to look at behind their credentials. If they are an optician in one jurisdiction, then they should be allowed into the next jurisdiction without any restrictions. So that's where NACOR started getting its genesis, creating entry to practice competencies, which is sort of the list of must-knows for opticians, and that was consistent. That therefore would be consistent across the country. Along with the competencies being developed, there was a very transparent blueprint that stated that these are the tasks that an optician should know for eyeglasses, for contact lenses, and now refraction. And this way, the exam pulled from that, and the candidates and the schools could count on the fact that the exam would be covering those items and not outside. So it actually sort of evened up things where the schools were teaching to the competencies, the NACOR was testing to the competencies, and you actually saw pass rates go up. And it wasn't because the exam got easier, it was because there was congruency now between what was being taught and tested. So for the past almost 18 years, the college has been co-administering the national exam in partnership with NACOR. And I think that partnership sort of started out as testing the waters as the college started looking to a third party to administer exams. And this was sort of that dipping its toe in the pond and making sure that, okay, fine, you're creating the content, you're marking the exams. We just want to be part of the equation as far as administration, just to make sure that it's being administered to, let's say, our standard. So that's been the model. What happens typically is NACOR collects the revenue from students or candidates, and NACOR is in charge of creating the exam, marking the exam, periodically getting the exam vetted. This exam, when we did the exams, we created the exams in-house NACOR goes a step further and uses the service of a psychometrician to ensure that question stems, all of these things. Those of you in education can attest to this, that the questions are being asked properly without things like too many distractors, that they're validated properly, and they go through quite an expense making sure that exam is defensible. So for their portion, NACOR takes half of the revenue from the exams, and the other half of the revenue comes to us at the college to cover costs such as hiring examiners, models, venue rentals, food, all of those expenses. And so there's a lot of in-house work happening at our end on top of doing all those functions. We're arranging for accommodations. We are working on scheduling candidates in their sections. So there's quite a bit that happens, and it's quite a bit of work because the registration team is not only registering interns, opticians, so that they're eligible to sit the exams, but then also taking care of all the logistics for the exams on top of that. So it's a very busy cycle happening twice a year. Sometimes, now that we've added the French exam, 2.5 times, I would say. And typically, for all of that work, the college was still ahead of the game after dispersing expenses of $20,000 to $40,000 a year. But that didn't at the same time account for any of the staff time. So, now with the introduction of the third exam, rising costs, rising number of candidates writing these exams, we're getting to a point where there's a lot of staff time being taken. And when we talk about the budget coming up, there's a budget A and budget B. The revenue that we're getting from the exams isn't really offsetting the hard costs, and it's certainly not covering the overtime and the amount of staff that are going out to these weekend exams and all the work leading up to it. It's not certainly not reflecting overtime and lieu time. So I will be talking a little bit later that NACOR is restructuring itself, where it's going to be focusing more on the delivery of services, regulatory services. They're going to be expanding their staffing, and in some provinces, they've already taken on completely running the exam. British Columbia, for instance, for the last 2 years has divested themselves of the exam completely, partly as they're going through regulatory reform and amalgamating there. Regulators are seeing that the exams should be more arm's length from the regulator themselves, a little bit more defensibility and transparency. And as well, structures are changing regulatory wise, where the College of Opticians of British Columbia will cease to exist and won't be there to be able to co-administer the exams. With us divesting the exams, NACOR is saying that they can take on the exams fully. If we decide to divest the exams to them, I think it'll free up a lot of our staff's time to work on more policy work. We still have a few very key things that we've always had. We will still, as a province, still have a voice on what that exam looks like through our NEC rep, because they'll be involved in giving input on the exam. The other thing is also we'll still have eyes on the ground through the function of the chief examiner. Typically, Peggy from our office, Peggy Dreyer, has been our chief examiner. She's able to see what's happening with the examiners, with candidates, how the exam is being run, and having Ontario's interest at heart there. So we would still have our voice on the exam. We would still have eyes on the administration of the exam. We would just be relinquishing ourselves of the heavy administrative load. And certainly there's not a financial benefit to us doing this anymore. So basically, we're in talks with NACOR to make sure that certain important things are covered, that there's a letter of understanding or memorandum of understanding developed that allows that if we're not happy with the way things are going, that we can revert back to co-administering it, and certain things that are legislatively or just organizationally important to us, such as a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, when it comes to the administration of the exam, both in the treatment of candidates and also the selection of examiners, things like that. So there's a few high-level principles and things that we want. We have certain experience requirements for examiners, at least 3 years of experience out of school before considering being elected or selected as an examiner. So these type of things we're working on to communicate with NACOR. And if we get an agreement from them that these things are all, and verbally we have so far, but we want to get this in writing. And if we get that sign off, the admin team is considering moving the exams administration fully over to NACOR. So I wanted to put that forward to the board as an FYI and take any questions or concerns that might be raised that we may have missed, so that we can raise that with NACOR.
Okay, so we'll open the floor to questions, feedback, comments. I see Rob has his hand up. Go ahead, Rob.
And we can also drop the screen share, I think, at this point.
Hey, so from my perspective, I think this is awesome. I think it'll free up a lot of our staff time, and they can spend time doing things that can be done and not administrative things for the exams. My only, and we have the chief examiner. We're always going to have an NEC rep, so we're good that way. Are there any concerns at all about the dates, or do we have any control over that? We'll be giving up control of that. Does that present any concerns? And I'm asking, I don't know. I'm not suggesting there is a concern. I've been a variable that I don't know about.
Yeah, we've raised concerns about dates and things for sure. They're usually selected collaboratively, and I've been assured that that would be the case going forward as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, feedback? Okay, not seeing any. Oh, go ahead, Dorina.
Excellent initiative. It was about time for the college to merge into such a direction. It's great. Question is, where will given the number of candidates that are participating in exams, the most of them are in Ontario, will the exams still take place mostly here, or they'll be across the country every time, or what is that? Or it's too much of a detail you don't know at this time?
No, not at all, Dorina. So it would be status quo. The venues, we've been trying to make sure that the venues are spread between Barrie and Toronto, like Seneca and Georgian. And then we're having one session out in Ottawa. So there's no change to that. If anything, NACOR leans on us to help them connect with examiners and connect with venues. So the board would still, or the college would still assist with leads, but it would be NACOR taking over all the signing up paperwork and details like logistics, arranging catering, all those lovely time-consuming things.
And the additional question is, will this influence the requirements of a candidate to participate in the exam, or everything remains the same? And when will this come in effect?
So we're looking for 2024. So this coming season, so the spring and fall exams to be taken on by NACOR. We would probably build into an agreement a window that we could take back the exams or vice versa with probably a 1-year notice, because it's they're very time intense setups for these exams. So either for us to take them back on or for them to divest themselves, we would have a very good runway to take it back on. But as I said, BC has been doing it for the last 2 years. We would be moving to that in the coming new year, and then I think a couple of other provinces, time frame wise, might be on by 2025.
Thank you. Okay, Derek.
Sorry. So I guess to Fazal and to our NEC rep at the same time, and Rob, I know you've had a lot of experience in the role with the exams and stuff like that. But for either of you, are there any things that are sitting heavy that we need to look at before we go getting into this type of agreement? Is there anything you guys want to see fixed, done, changed, altered, any of that stuff?
I'll speak first.
Yeah,
I don't think over the years we've got a great working relationship. Any concerns that we've had have always been addressed. Doing the exams, if there are any concerns, they're addressed at the next meeting. So I'm I don't anticipate anything major. The dates were the only thing that I had questioned. And NACOR wants us to succeed too. They want to make it better for the candidates. If they can put in an extra exam, they'll do it. If they don't need one in Ottawa, they won't do it. But they listen to all our requests. They're very receptive. Or historically, they always have been.
Yeah, I've always found Jody and the team to be responsive to our needs. We are the largest client across the country as far as the number of candidates goes. So I think there is an extra incentive for them because this would be the majority of their work. The other thing is, you know, as I said, Amy and I are working together to create a written agreement to sort of codify certain non-negotiables for the college. The experience, a voice in the scheduling, you know, our commitments, you know, a strategic values, vision, and mission type of thing, our commitment to DEI. So, you know, we would probably codify all of that and wouldn't make a move without that being agreed to.
Sounds perfect then.
Okay. Thank you, Fazal. So that was an update. Peggy, last comment?
Sorry. I think it was a year or more ago, there was a conversation about where to have the exams, and I was having some concern about it. Fazal, does that sound right?
Yeah, we were talking about capacity and things which we've resolved, and we have been having exams at both venues, Seneca College and Georgian.
So just as an added bonus, having not us managing the exam takes away any perception of any of those issues.
There is a nice separation that happens with us fully being separate, because we point to NACOR and say it's their exam, but candidates end up calling us and we are helping them with certain information about the exam. So it's a very mixed message that gets sent out, because we say, no, it's them, but then we're involved.
Right. Anyway, sounds great.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next portion of our agenda, 10.0, the financial variance report, and we're going to invite Fiza to speak to those reports.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. And good afternoon, everyone. I know everyone's super excited. This was after lunch because now you've got hopefully some caffeine, some sugar in you because there's a lot of numbers coming your way. So we'll start off with our variance report and jump right in just because there's a lot to cover over the next few items. So our report for this period is ending October 31st, 2023. So just as a reminder, this is just everything that has been received by the college thus far. There are still expenses coming for November and December, and quite a few things that were incurred in earlier months that still have not been received. So total revenue for this period is $3,551,041. So about $31,000 under budget and 1% below budget. Overall, we're trending quite well on all lines. One thing I would like to point out is line 5 for national examination fees does look like we're trending significantly lower. This is just due to the fact that revenue was incurred in October and November and is received in mid-November. So this past month, we received a check for the October exams to the tune of about $80,000, and we will be receiving another check in December for the November exams. So that line item will be catching up and will be reflected closer towards and possibly exceeding the budgeted amount. Are there any questions for revenue before I move on? Yep, looking okay.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So moving on to board and committee expenses, we are currently at $71,741,000. So about 62% under budget still. Two reasons, like we are still looking at this across the board as coming in under budget, mainly due to the fact that we previously budgeted for in-person meetings for all committees and the board, as well as most of our board meetings being in person. However, that was not the case for this year. We had all virtual meetings for all of our committees, and we had one in-person board meeting in the summer. So these numbers will still be increasing due to the fact that we have a lot of the last minute end of the year submissions. I am very, very thankful to everyone who's been getting their earlier expenses in. I've had a huge influx come in for November, so we will see these numbers trending a little bit higher for the next year-end variance report, but still just a reminder that they will not be as close to the actual budgeted items as none of the in-person meetings have happened. Before we move on, any questions for board and committee expenses? All right, great.
Okay.
Moving on to operations and administration, we are currently at $2,252,714, so about 29% under budget still. As you'll see across the board, we are still in the green, meaning we are not trending to be particularly over budget on any line item. One thing I did just want to flag a little bit was the line 25 for database. You can see that we are currently 1% over budget to the tune of about $1,000. Just depending on the remaining invoices that come in for November and December, it is possible that we'll see a little bit of an increase there. Cannot be 100% accurate, but possibly to the tune of about another 10,000. And this is simply due to the fact that we had a lot of really big projects happen this year. And it is sometimes, as many of you know, with tech projects, there are things that are a bit more time consuming, require a little more people hours. So if we're coming in a little bit higher, we're still in a safe zone. And for general operational, that's line 28, it looks to be the tune of about $90,000 under budget. We do still have our year-end bank fees to incur, which is a significant amount of this expense. And that is in relation to all the renewals that we will be receiving in December. So are there any questions for operations or administration? Yes, Samir.
Fantastic. Actually, I had a couple of questions regarding the revenue, but again, you explained it. It was thoroughly understood. Great. I have only one question regarding the database that you mentioned. In October board meeting, we had database budgeted expense was 100,000. Now this report, it says 155.
So that we actually made a correction. I'm not sure if you recall at that board meeting, was we had our license renewal, which is about 55,000. So previously that was not included in the database cost. That was just purely additional database usage costs. So we put that all together just to show one cleaner line, if that makes sense.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Are there any other questions?
Any additional questions from the board for Fiza? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you for that, Fiza. And with that, Fiza is going to stay presenting and this time take a look at the 2024 draft budget.
All right, perfect. So going right into the next item, which is our draft 2024 budget. I just want to give a little bit of background as to how we came to these numbers and why you're seeing those two budgets in front of you. So just for a bit of background, the operating budget provides a forecast of our revenue against operating expenses for the next fiscal year, presented in this income statement format. So for each line item, we go through this very thoroughly, starting in late August, going over fiscal year and year-end cost projections with our managers, talking a little bit about activity for the year and what we're anticipating to come due in Q4 of the year. We look at actual figures at October 31st and the account variances to the 2023 budget. So this would be if there's any line item that's veering a bit out of control, if there's anything that's looking like we're going to be bringing in a lot more, spending a lot more, bringing in a lot more revenue, we're taking that into account. We've been looking at 5-year historical averages and expense trends to review pre and post COVID-19 cost trends. Previously, this used to be a 3-year historical average, but as we all know, with COVID-19 from 2020 onwards, costs were significantly impacted, and this was a bit unusual activity. So this gives us a broader picture of where we used to be what things were like during COVID and what things are like in the new normal now. We also review vendor work orders and quotes with all of our managers. So all of our managers are able to give us a wish list of all the activities and items that they would like to do for the year, how it lines up with the strategic plan, and we build those costs in. We review fixed costs based on current contracts. We also review all our contracts to see if anything's coming due, where we have a bit of negotiating power. We take a look at 2023 and projected 2024 college statistics in terms of our registrants, membership numbers, students, just to have an idea as to what we're looking at in terms of revenue trends. And finally, we build in additional contingencies for operating activity based on what is based on a risk control framework, just based on what is going to be likely to impact the college. Hopefully never, but it's always a good idea to be prepared. So these are things such as our IT contingencies, cybersecurity, or equipment. So there are a number of proposed budget items that do differ from the 2023 fiscal year budget. So the college, on our revenue line items, our college continues to work with an investment advisor to ensure that we secure the most competitive rates for our investments. So you will see a bit of an increase there, and that's because we, once again, got very lucky with the markets being what they are, to be able to lock in higher rates. For budgeted committee meeting expenses, this reflects the board's direction to continue with virtual meetings only. This has been the trend for the last couple of years, and this is something that we've consistently been coming under budget with, so it's appropriate for our budget to be reflecting it as such. For board meetings, we have budgeted for all of them to be virtual, save for one in-person meeting in the summer, just again, based on the board's direction. We've increased some costs for database as well to include some new projects to support online applications, renewals, and the new rec changes that have come about. And we've included additional budgets for external relations to allow for more in-person board and staff attendance at national conferences and trade shows. So you will have two versions of the budget in front of you, version A and version B. As previously discussed in the last item, version A is similar to the previous year's budgets. It still includes all of the exam-related expenses and revenue. While version B, we have removed the national exam revenue, we've taken out examiner expenses, model expenses, and the general exam expenses that are all related, that are budgeted under general expenses. So I will jump into the actual budgets, and I won't go through everything line.
Sorry,
yes, for sure. Sorry.
If we can
Rob,
pause for one second.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We've just got a question, I think, from Rob. Maybe we can grab that
Okay.
before going into numbers.
For sure.
Go ahead, Rob. Oh, you're just muted.
Sorry. You mentioned about board room, that the board gave the direction that board meetings were going to be on Zoom. Is that up for discussion again? Do we discuss that? Was that for never ever, or when did the board decide this, and how long does it go on for? And when do we open it up for discussion?
Could I speak to that?
For sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Fazal.
Okay. So what we did is we took, I guess we've checked in yearly with the board on preference so that we can generate numbers to support it. We're happy to create numbers around whichever model. I think last year we did a little bit more of a robust dive into it. This year we did a survey tailing from the last board meeting. We had kind of mentioned in reflection that a survey was coming to kind of express if you wanted to see more in person, less in person, or status quo, which is one of our 4 board meetings to be in person, particularly the summer one. So the survey results sort of came in where we had one outlier where it was, we want to go back to full in person, one at the other end saying we want to go to full remote, and then the majority were supporting the 1 meeting in person, 3 meetings remote. So we built the budget based on that. We're obviously trending towards a bit of a surplus. So there is room in there if the board decided to change something and wanted to go back to more in person or all in person. But we went in building this budget with the assumption out of the survey that we received from you about a month and a half ago.
Thank you. I guess I'm having a hard time with certain things. I don't know Tanya, I don't know Kevin, and it's not good or bad. It's just, it's nice to get a little more familiar with people. There's other people I don't know, but if that was the will and that was the survey showed, then that's what it is. I guess I don't remember getting the survey back to me, so maybe I never looked at it. I have one other question, if possible. We're going to talk about individual budgets in a minute, or is now the time to bring it up?
I think as Fizz is going line by line, we can take a look at
Awesome.
each line.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, so you can go ahead, Fizza.
All right, great. So we'll be looking at version A first, and I just wanted to make sure everyone can see the budget because I just flipped from one screen to the other without stop sharing. Is it showing up?
We're seeing the Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, so this is version A of the budget. So this again still includes all the exam related revenue and expenses. So for the budget for this year, I won't do too deep of a dive because these are a lot of lines and I know everyone has had a chance to look through it. I will just highlight again the interest and investment income. We're looking at a big increase there, and that is, as mentioned, we were able to lock in those better rates. So total revenue for 2024 that we are anticipating is $3,769,941. Are there any questions about any of the revenue items that anyone had while looking the budget over?
Questions
yes,
for the
Jarena.
revenue? Jarena.
Forgive me if I'm totally wrong, but because you incurred so much unused revenue, you're in such a high bracket of percentage of unused budgeted items, and now you're planning to divert outside the exams. You're still budgeting the same amount for the future year.
So sorry, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
And you're still, surveyed by us, the participants, that it's difficult to come in person several times, and it's better to come online most of the time. So I still don't understand, why do you have so much money allocation to like overseen budget? Like the 2023, we have 27, 30, 40, 70% above budget at this point. Of course, it will change by the end of the year, but it's still a lot outstanding. So it's a little bit hard for me to comprehend how come we see this since the COVID time, and yet we're still budgeting for it.
So for this year's budget, we've taken the in-person out completely just because we've gotten a final go-ahead from the board after that survey that they're okay with no in-person committee. For last year, yes, we were still budgeting for in-person just because there was still a bit of an appetite while the 2023 budget was created at the end of 2022. So at that time, there was still a bit of an appetite of, oh, maybe we could come back in person. So just being, a bit more responsible on the more conservative budget side, we made sure that was built in case any of that activity actually happened.
And the exams?
So exams for this budget, so this is the version that still includes all the exam revenue and expenses. In case, let's say we're not able to pass off the exams to NACOR. And then version B, which I'll show you in just a minute, shows the budget without. Yes.
All right. Okay.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries.
Version B yet. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Any other questions about revenue before we move on?
Fizza, our largest line item typically every year is register and renewal income.
It is.
So when you come to that, can you maybe enlighten the board as to sort of what the assumptions are as far as renewal rates and things like that?
Absolutely, sure. So we're looking, we've been taking our previous year's historical and taking a % average. I would have had this on my note. I apologize. I am blanking a little bit, but it is a bit around 2% of an increase. So in 2022, our actual renewal numbers were 3,202. Our current numbers for 2023 are 3,216. For 2024 prediction, and I apologize, the note should read budget 2024. Our prediction is 3,274 opticians, and then again at this increased fee of $1,017.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So no questions on revenue. We'll move on to board and committee member expenses. So as discussed, you'll notice that we have increased the number of meetings for some of the committees. Again, just based on the appetite, we have added a few meetings for the registration committee as there was a request with the new reg changes coming out. However, we no longer have any of the in-person meetings budgeted for, except for our one in-person meeting for the board. Yes, Rob.
Oh, you're just muted, Rob.
I apologize. You just said the R1 meeting for the board?
There is an in-person meeting for the board, and the rest of the meetings, committee meetings, board meetings are all virtual.
Okay, so there is one in-person board meeting.
Yes.
Okay, when I look at the budget for RegCom, that was done after or before we got the news?
After.
We updated it this week based on more meetings.
Okay, good. It's just I have no idea what the meetings are going to be, but you updated it. That's good. You have a better idea. Amy's going to have a much better idea than I will right now.
Yeah, we worked with Anna based
Anna,
on your input at the just at the end of the week. We added a few more meeting times.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about board and committee expenses? Good. All right. Moving on to operations and administration. Nothing major on these first line items. For IT consulting, we have added a little bit of budget to possibly bring in a project management intern. This would be a co-op student through Seneca, so it is part of a newer initiative to provide some more training to our local community and to do a bit more outreach and bring new talent in. So we're excited about that.
And I'll just jump in there.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's also our project manager, IT manager, has flagged that while she's usually at full blast all year round, with the introduction of the registration regulation amendments, we're going to have to be building something like some new bills from scratch, including the inactive class structure and all of these things, and creating mechanisms for people to move in and out of these things when they renew. So there is some new construction required this year as output from that registration reg change. So it's going to mean mapping out a lot more processes and managing things. So she said she could use a little bit of assistance, and rather than hiring another full PM or half PM, she suggested bringing on a co-op student that could do the tasks that she needs to control costs. Sorry, Vizel, I'm back to you.
No problem. For database, we've increased costs a bit too, just because there are quite a few new projects coming in. I do apologize. This anticipated number is actually trending a little bit higher than what I previously mentioned in the variance report. This number is just a very far-reaching possible estimate. I don't think we are going to get close to this for this year, but I did just want to build in a little bit just in case we do pay off any of those invoices before December, if they do come in. But we are looking at incurring about $160,000 for next year, just because there are major projects that are going to be undertaken, including quite a few QA projects, online applications, new fields for reg changes, database cleanups, elections, and joint register. And then moving on to external relations. External relations is another line item where we've increased costs a bit. Again, this is, as Faisal previously mentioned, there's been a lot of benefit to having more board and staff attendance at each of these events. And previously, we've been budgeting for one staff member to attend per year, but quite often we find that there are a lot of topics being covered that would benefit more than one manager. So it is nice for us to be able to build a little bit more budget in just to have more of our staff attend these events. And then finally moving into Salaries, we've also increased the budget for a little bit this year. Sorry, for 2024. This is to basically show that we have a new position that we are hiring for, which is our policy manager. It has actually been filled. We're hoping to have her start next week, actually. So this is going to be a great benefit and addition to our team. We've also been seeing just rising costs of living, and we've tried to make sure that we are making sure that we're staying competitive compared to what other colleges are offering in terms of salaries, and ensuring that we are offering a competitive pay for all of our team members. We also recently built in a new feature for retention to ensure that we have a really great team currently working. So we want to make sure that everyone is properly compensated. So overall, I know the big numbers that everyone is looking for were total operations and administration expenses are looking at 3,483,352. Total expenditures, which is operations including the committee expenses, is 3,626,123, which brings us to a total surplus for the year of 143,817. Are there any questions about the operations or administrative expenses before we check out the next budget? Yes, Samir.
Samir?
It's a great report, definitely. I want to just make one comment regarding the budgeted rent
Yes.
for the next year, 2024. I know we are basically working with sharing office space with some other the healthcare the colleges. So I'm just wondering, have we heard any word on that? Did anyone really move in at the office? Anything that we can cut the expenses in that area? So
For sure. I'll actually pass it over to Faisal because I'll have a better update.
Thank you.
So, Samir, we just actually had a potential space sharing partner sort of in our space 2 days ago on Thursday. So they're probably going to try. I think most of their team was there, but they want to probably try another day. And that'll be in January, probably, when we can reschedule them next. And then if they are going to move forward with us, it'll probably be mid-year that their lease expires at their current premise. So with sort of the unknown, we didn't want to show an input factor right now. But if it goes through next year, we'll definitely be indicating an offset to rent going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. No, I gathered that correct, but just wanted to see
where it was.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank you.
for sure.
And just to add for a little bit more clarity, say we do have a space sharing initiative. So the rent will still be listed as the full expense due to the fact that we will still be the leaseholders. We will create a new revenue line item for the shared rent expense. So that's how it'll get balanced out there. All right, great.
Hey, Peggy.
I don't know how this plays in when you're renting a space as opposed to owning it, but somewhere in my reading in the last few weeks, I came across something talking about the liability when you have people using your space and renting your space. So I just kind of want to bring that up in terms of what are the liability policies that the college has in that regard. Just
we'll make
being
sure
a little risk averse and not wanting to have an ugly surprise.
Yeah, Peggy, we'll take care of all the insurance and stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention it because it sort of came as that's something to think about, in whatever context in my life, right?
Excellent. Okay, in the interest of moving forward, Stephen, maybe we'll go to the last question and then we'll move on to the next budget item.
Thanks, Sarah. I just want to point out that the talks of the government merging different colleges together and other agencies together has resurfaced again. I sit on health unit board, and where they've gone away from the mandatory merger to now mutually beneficial agreements for different agencies to work together. So while it seemed to go away for a while, the the topic of merging things together is back on the hot plate, and especially, and kudos to staff for looking out and looking with other colleges, because that merger thing is resurfaced again now.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, Fizza, we'll get you to move forward with the rest of the budget items.
All right, perfect. So this next one won't take too long. It's just the version B, which I wanted to quickly show everyone. So with version B, what we've done is we've just taken out all the revenue and expenses related to exams. So you'll see there's no examination fee revenue here, bringing new revenue down to $3,629,941. We've also taken out line items from general operational expenses. You'll see has gone down by about 60,000. That's usually kind of what we're putting towards exam expenses. And we've also taken out the line items for examiners and models. And so that brings our total expenditures to $3,485,173, and our total surplus to $144,767. Rob, your question.
So the budget item is not, the budget's not going to change much at all. Do we have an idea how much staff time it will free up?
Quite a bit, actually. I know we haven't done any like formal calculation in terms of what that converts to in terms of dollar value, but we do, I think, about at least a week or so of overtime is incurred by staff. And this is by managers such as like Anna or Peggy who have to travel and also attend. So
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Dorina?
It looks good, but the difference about the same. So where's the rest gone?
So I can speak to that. So Dorina, as we said, we used to have a bit of a surplus running the exams. We've gotten to a point where it's break even. So the revenue is now offsetting the expenses. So budget A has the revenue at the top and the expenses at the bottom. This one removes the exam. It nets out to within $1,000. So what the case that we're trying to promote here is that the exams have become revenue neutral. They're no longer revenue positive, and they continue to consume a ton of staff time and overtime and lieu time. So removing the exams or divesting ourselves from the exam won't change our surplus, but it will recoup a ton of staff time, which can be redeployed to policy work, especially in registration, who takes on the exams. They've got a ton of supporting policy under the new registration amended reg. So this is going to come, there's potential cost savings where we don't have to hire extra staff, which would be, over $50,000 and up type of thing, bringing in people. So this is actually going to save us, we haven't quantified the overtime, it's probably over $10,000 or more, but it's actually the sheer human resource strain and distraction from policy work that the exams create for us.
Okay, any other questions on the budgets? And so, Fizza, are you looking for folks to give a preference as to the budget that will be approved?
No, I think we're looking for both should be approved, and then once a decision's final, I'm just looking at Amy Frizzell for confirmation, right? That's what we're waiting for, an approval on the decision for exams, and then we'll let everyone know if we're going with version A or version B, but an approval of both for now.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do a fist of 5 to approve the budgets as presented. And that looks like everyone. So I will pass to Stephen for a motion.
Thank you. And the motion that we're seeking is that the board approve the 2024 draft budgets as presented. Do I have a mover?
Peggy?
Peggy, seconder?
I can second, Alicia.
Okay, Alicia?
All in favor? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Not seeing any, the motion carries.
Okay, so we will pass the floor back to Fizza once again to present the briefing note with respect to the appointment of the auditor.
All right, perfect. And last thing from me, I promise. I know you may be getting sick of me by now. So the final item I have here is the approval of the auditor for the 2023 fiscal year. So that is for next year's audit for this current fiscal year. So just a little bit of background. At the September meeting, the executive committee reviewed a completed auditor assessment tool. And so this tool basically captures all of the staff's observations and their opinions about the way the audit was carried out, as well as the opinions and observations of the executive committee as their capacity as the financial committee. So in this document, we reviewed audit quality indicators such as the auditor's independence and objectivity, their level of professional skepticism, the quality of the engagement team, the communications with board and staff, and the overall quality of service that we received. So after reviewing this document, the executive committee agreed that there was sufficient information to come to a conclusion and recommend that the auditor would be reappointed for the next fiscal year. The one point that was brought up to the staff, apologize for my light, was that to ensure that there's a senior audit team member who is familiar with the college's processes, who will continue to oversee the engagement. And just as a note, we do have a meeting with them this Friday to be chatting a little bit about what next year's audit plan looks like. So we have taken that into consideration, and that will be executed for next year.
Robert?
Yes, Rob.
So do I interpret that as we're going to kind of hope, wish, insist that Peter's going to be there again? Was that my impression?
We haven't seen Peter in a long time.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Any other questions for Fizza? Okay. If there's no questions, Stephen, I believe we can move to a motion on this piece.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion that we're seeking is that the board approved Grewal Guyette as the auditor for the 2023 fiscal year. Do I have a mover?
Let's see, we saw Derek,
Derek, seconder?
Kevin,
Kevin? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Let's see. That motion carries.
okay. So item 11.0, Amy, maybe I'll check in. We're just a couple of minutes before when we might have a break. Do you want to try, does the board want to try to move ahead with item 11 before a break?
That's up to the board. I'm in your hands.
Seeing some nodding hands. So we've
Yep.
got about 2 minutes until our scheduled break and about 10 minutes scheduled for this agenda item. Maybe just a show of thumbs up. Do people want to power through on this item? Okay, there we go. So I will then pass the floor to Amy to look at the approval of the committee slate.
Thanks, Sarah. So your 2023 Executive Committee met over lunch to review a draft committee slate. So we're putting this up on the screen for you all. So just a few comments on what went into the creation of this proposed slate. So number one is, of course, the committee composition requirements under our legislation and the college's bylaws and committee terms of reference. Then, of course, what another big factor taken into account was committee and board members' preferences for which committees they wanted to be on. Also, steps were taken to make sure to avoid conflicts of interest between committees. For example, the most common being ICRC and QAC. And of course, making sure that there's a balance of experience on each committee. So making sure there are people with some continuity who have been on the committee before, who can carry forward to the new year, as well as some new perspectives with individuals who have not been on the committee before. Again, and then a couple of more principles taken into account. So last year, the board approved a policy around greater separation between the board and committees. So there are fewer board members on committees now and more appointed committee members. So you'll notice that elected committee members, those who appear in green on the chart in front of you, are each on one committee in addition to the discipline committee, leaving aside the executive committee because that, of course, was elected this morning. Our public board members, so the government appointees are either on one or two committees. The reason being that for legislative purposes, we do sometimes need extra coverage from a public member on those committees to make sure we have the right quorum. And then our appointed committee members are the ones who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting of this work now. So they are typically on two committees or three for those public non-optician appointed members who are also going to be on our screening committee. So also in front of you, just highlighted in purple, are the brand new appointed committee members who were appointed this morning. So these are individuals who are going to be new to the college. You'll see that almost every committee has at least one new person. So this is to make sure, they're getting exposure to different work and that each committee is having some new perspective. The one exception, we've got our registration committee, which we have all veterans, most people who have, not everyone who's been on the registration committee before, but everyone who spent at least a year with the college or, almost a year. And this is because, as we've now mentioned a few times, we know that registration committee is going to have a significant workload in preparation for the new regulation coming into effect. So making sure that they've got that knowledge and skill behind them. So that is my spiel on explaining what is on this list in front of you. And I will turn it over to Sarah.
Great. And I see Rob has his hand up. Rob, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, we can't see the whole page, so it's hard to really figure it out.
Yeah, it's a balance between it being too small.
You see me getting close and raising my head. Which column is
Would you like us to zoom in on a specific committee for you, Rob?
Okay, we're good, thank you. No, I was looking at the bottom of discipline. I couldn't see the whole list.
Yeah. So that's everybody.
There
so
we
the
go.
discipline
Thank you.
committee includes everybody,
Good.
and that's of course not going to meet as a committee, but may be called upon for individual panels.
We're good, thank you.
Okay, Netta.
Just a comment, Rob, I updated my Zoom this before the meeting. That's why it took me a bit longer to join in. But now you have an option to Zoom in your screen.
Fabulous.
Great tip.
Yeah, before staff they needed to do, but now we actually can Zoom in the share screen as well.
It wasn't the Zoom, it was the left and right and the bottom. Oh, so there's a way to zoom out. I'll have to learn that one.
That's great to know. Thanks for sharing that, Netta. Oh, and you're just muted.
Oh, after update drop, you should have the most updated Zoom.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the committee slate? Okay, so I will turn to Stephen then for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion is to approve the committee slate as presented. Do I have a mover?
So Henry,
Seconder?
Tanya,
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Not seeing any. The motion carries.
okay. So thank you, everyone. That takes us to our first break of the afternoon. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and a reminder just to mute your lines and turn your videos off, and we will see you back in 15 minutes. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, from break. I'm taking a look, and it seems like we have most folks back with videos back on. So hopefully you had a chance to stretch your legs. We're moving into the back half of the agenda now. And for this first portion, I will be inviting Desiree Petrolito to take us through some presentations, the quarterly policies, starting with the governance policy changes. So Desiree will welcome you and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As you know, at each meeting, the Governance Committee brings forward policies that are scheduled for content review. We're going to start with 3 policies that, on review, the committee will be recommending that we keep the status quo. The first policy that we'll look at is the board support of the Registrar CEO policy. This policy relates to the board's commitment to supporting the Registrar CEO so that they can effectively carry out their role. The policy was approved in 2017, and the last time we reviewed it was 2020. No updates are being proposed for this policy at this time, as it appears that this policy remains relevant to meet the board's needs.
Any questions from the board on this piece? Okay, not seeing any questions. Does the board agree with the public interest considerations identified by the committee? Are there any others that anyone would like to note? Okay, not seeing any. Can we see a test for a high five then, that people feel comfortable moving forward with it as is? Okay. Okay, that looks like everyone. So, Stephen, we can move to you for a motion on this first piece.
Thanks, Sarah. The motion is to approve no changes to the board support of the Registrar CEO policy. Do I have a mover?
See Omar.
Yeah. Second?
Derek.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
This is Netta, aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone abstaining at all? Not hearing or seeing any? Then the motion carries.
Okay. Desiree, I will pass back to you.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn to the governance approach policy. This policy outlines the board's commitment to policy governance as its governance model and to ensuring that roles are clearly defined between the board and operations. No updates are being proposed for this policy at this time, as it appears this policy remains relevant to meet the board's needs, like the previous policy. This policy was first approved in 2017 and last reviewed and updated in 2020.
Hey, any questions with respect to the governance approach policy? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Does the board agree with the public interest considerations identified? Henry. Oh, Henry's going straight to the high five. Okay. Did anyone before we get there want to note any additional public interest considerations with respect to this policy? Okay. So Henry, you started us off. Let's get the rest to follow. Show of high five of who is comfortable moving to a motion on this one. Okay. Okay, and so we will go ahead then to a motion. Stephen?
Thanks, Sarah. The motion is to approve no changes to the governance approach policy. Do I have a mover?
See Henry?
Seconder?
Tanya?
All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Not hearing or seeing anyone abstaining. And the
Okay.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we will pass the floor back to Desiree now for the next item.
Finally, we'll turn to the board decision-making policy. This policy describes the process for how the board makes decisions and the various steps that will be taken in the process. No changes have been identified for this policy either. This policy was approved in 2018, and as it is on a 5-year review cycle, this is the first time that the policy is being reviewed since it was initially adopted.
Questions or comments on the board decision-making policy? Okay, I'm not seeing any on that piece. Once again, with respect to the public interest considerations, what was highlighted was with respect to the board being accountable to its commitments and mandate. Is the board in agreement with the public interest consideration? And any additional items that anyone wants to note? Okay, seeing nods. So we'll see a show of high five to move to a motion on this piece. Okay, so Stephen, off to you for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. The motion is to approve no changes to the board decision-making policy. Do I have a mover?
See Derek.
Okay. Seconder?
Kevin.
Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing it. Anyone abstaining? Not hearing any or seeing any? And the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we are now going to have Desiree present to us on 2 more policies where changes are being proposed.
Okay. The next policy the governance committee looked at this fall was the board effectiveness self-evaluation policy. This policy was first approved by the board in 2018 to confirm and enshrine to writing the board's commitment to participating in an annual self-evaluation process. The current process for the annual self-evaluation is outlined in your briefing note. The briefing note also outlines some of the ways that the process has evolved since it was first implemented in areas where the policy is now no longer in alignment. Importantly, in 2021, the board approved a motion to commit to a process for regular third-party evaluations of its effectiveness. The first third-party evaluation was carried out in 2022, and the results of the evaluation were presented to the board in March of 2023. The board further committed to undergoing third-party assessments every 3 years, in accordance with the standard established under the College Performance Measurement Framework. The current policy, however, doesn't cover this new third-party evaluation process. The policy also has a few misalignments with respect to the annual self-evaluation process. For example, it states that the results of the annual survey will be analyzed by a third-party consultant, when the board agreed a couple of years ago to take that process in-house. It also has the survey results being filtered through the governance committee when it's being seen as more efficient in the last 2 cycles to take the results straight to the board for strategic planning session and action plan development workshop. So because of all of that, it's proposed that we recommend that the board update the policy to align with the process that's being followed.
Okay, and so we'll open the floor to questions. Any questions on the self-evaluation policy or the changes that are being proposed? Okay, not seeing any. With this one, is the board in agreement with the public interest considerations? And is there anything that anyone wants to highlight? Peggy? Oh, Peggy's high-fiving. Everyone knows the process now. Great. So why don't we move ahead then and see a fist of 5 from the rest of the group to move forward with the proposed changes. Okay. So Stephen, I will pass to you. And I see thumbs up from Netta.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion is to recommend that the board approve the proposed changes to the board effectiveness self-evaluation policy. Do I have a mover?
See, Rob,
Seconder?
Derek,
Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing. Anyone abstaining? Not hearing, seeing it. That motion carries.
Okay, so finally we will move to the investment policy. And Desiree, I will pass that back to you.
So finally, for today is the investment policy. This policy outlines the parameters that the board has set around how college funds are invested. On review, the committee determined that we recommend one amendment to the policy, specifically that the list of investment priorities be adjusted to express that preservation of capital and maintenance of liquidity should take precedence over a reasonable return on investment. If the in the committee's view, this change would be in the public's interest by recognizing that return on investment is not the college's first priority, as we are a non-for-profit organization with a public protection mandate.
Okay, questions, feedback on this piece? Seeing shaking heads. Okay. With respect to the public interest considerations identified by the committee, is the board in agreement? Is there anything else that you would like to note? Seeing nodding heads. Okay. Can we see a test for agreement on being comfortable moving to a motion? Okay, seeing most folks. So Stephen, once again, I will pass to you.
Thanks. The motion is to recommend that the board approve the proposed changes to the investment policy. Do I have a mover?
I see Peggy.
Okay. Seconder?
Henry.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing anyone. Anyone abstaining? Not seeing or hearing. And that motion carries.
Okay. So thank you, Desiree, for those presentations. Great. Take care. Have a nice afternoon. Okay, so with that, we are moving right along and we are going to move to item 13, looking at the approval of the draft 2023 to 2025 strategic plan. And I will pass the floor to Amy.
Sorry, Sarah, we gave you a note that was not quite accurate there, where the 2023 to 2025 strategic plan was approved last year. So I'm glad that we're not having to revisit that. What we're going to be looking at right now is just a wrap up of your 2023 work plan. So you've seen this already a couple of times this year, and this is just to give you that sort of final December year end look at the year that we've just had to see whether we've managed to get through your required items for the year. So as you know, this is the work plan that you develop every year. And in a moment, we're going to be looking ahead to 2024, but we want to make sure that the board has stayed on track for 2023. So if we scroll down, you'll see that what's great is if we scroll, through each quarter slowly, you're going to see a lot of green and blue. So green are things that were on the agenda to begin with and were completed on schedule. Blue are things that were either moved around just because of, things that come up during the year, or added to the work plan at some point during the year, but have been completed. And then there's a couple of things that have been crossed off because they've either been moved or no longer needed. So everything that's on there should have a note sort of explaining where it came from and if it was moved from when or to where. But if we scroll down all the way to the end of the year, you'll see that we're still all in the blue and green. So that's a sign that the board has checked off its work plan for 2023. So this is a check-in. We're not looking for any motion on this, but just wanted to turn it back over to Sarah in case there are any questions or anything to discuss out of this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. And thanks for that correction. I didn't want to whirl us into more strategic planning. We already did that. Any questions or comments on the strategic work plan from 2023 for folks? Yeah, Derek.
Wanted to point out that since we've started this process with the strategic plans and the work that the admin team is doing to help keep us on track, the check-ins are great. The fact that we have a plan that runs 3 to 5 years or 3 years at least is great. And I love seeing that it's getting completed so well. So just thanks to the board and thanks to the admin team for keeping us such good work and where we're supposed to be.
Thank you, Derek. Seeing some reactions from the board in agreement. Okay. Wonderful. So with that, we will move on then, Amy, to the 2024 strategic work plan.
Great. So now that all of that work for 2023 is done, let's start loading up the work plan for next year. So this was in your package. I'm not going to go through each quarter in tremendous detail, but we have mapped out the year for you. Now, this is, of course, our best estimate at this point in the year as to when certain items are going to fall. It's to be expected that some of these items will shift because, you know, it's incumbent on the board to demonstrate a bit of that flexibility. And as we saw last year, you know, sometimes there are things that come up on short notice that are external to the college, and, you know, our ability to pivot when needed is always in the college's interest. So that being said, we've mapped out, there's a lot coming up this year, especially from, you'll see a lot of items from the registration committee, which is taking on a review of all of the policies that falls under its umbrella to have a more formal review schedule for all of those and make sure that they're being looked at on a regular basis, similar to our governance policies. So you're going to be seeing more of that on the work plan for next year. We've mapped out, of course, all of the monitoring reports that are going to be coming to you based on the schedule that the board has approved. And of course, all of the regular operational matters that come every quarter. So,
Amy,
yeah.
Just before you go too much further, I just see that Tanya's hand is up.
Yeah.
So just in case it's from the first section, go ahead, Tanya.
Just something for clarity. I get like RC means registration committee. What is regular R? Just the R?
Just an R. So in the monitoring reports, that means it's a monitoring report from the registrar as opposed to
registrar, and then B is the board?
Yes.
Might be helpful in the future if there's a little legend just for new people.
Absolutely. That's a
thank
very
you for the
good
clarity.
Great. So so this is what it's looking like. And I will turn it over to the group for any questions, comments.
Great. Any additional questions or comments with respect to the 2024 work plan? Okay. Not seeing any. Not enough coffee in that afternoon break, I think. I think if there's no questions, Stephen, we can move to a motion.
Okay, and the motion we're seeking is to approve the 2024 strategic work plan. Do I have a mover?
Yes, Rob.
I'll second it.
Okay, Stephen.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing. Anyone abstaining? And the
Okay,
motion
great.
carries.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. So we are now moving on to the registration policies, and Rob Vizina, the chair of registration, will take us through those pieces.
I remembered. Okay, welcome everybody. So this year, the registration committee implemented a schedule to regularly review the content of the registration policies to ensure the policies remain relevant. We wrote this before we knew what was coming up this year, so it appears as though, have we made an announcement that, does everybody know? I'll ask Amy and Fazal what's going on. So apparently,
you're talking about the registration regulation.
yes.
You know, you could probably set some context because it's in my registrar's report that's coming tomorrow.
Okay, so what happened was we our registration, our regs are very old, outdated, antiquated. There's a lot of different verbs you can use. We've been trying to have them changed for many years. I spent many hours on different registration committees trying to do it. It looks like the government is kind of saying that they're going to do it, and we may get it done next year, which is why the big push is, or why we're talking about there's going to be a lot of things going up next year. So a lot of the things that we're doing, some of it may change or may not change, so we're plugging away as if it doesn't change. So basically, we implemented a schedule to regularly review the content of registration of policies to ensure the policies remain relevant. In Q4, the committee reviewed 3 policies that you found in front of you today. The first policy that we'd like to present is the internationally educated applicants policy. The overall aim of the proposed amendments to this policy is to reflect current assessment process for internationally educated applicants and to make the content more reader-friendly. The amended policy also sets out the next steps in the application process based on the results of the initial review. It also includes a new section guide to those applicants who are unable to provide the required documents due to circumstances beyond their control. A draft of the policy with the proposed changes is included for you for your consideration in Appendix A. So I'm sure we've all read it. Do we have any questions? I'm going to rely heavily on Anna here as well.
Any questions for Rob? Yeah, Tanya.
Just a comment. I think these changes, especially the one about if you can't get your documents due to unforeseen circumstances, really shows the colleges and the board's commitment to DEI and inclusivity.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. Derek.
Rob, I'm not sure if this is the right place to have this conversation, but we talk about internationally educated applicants. Is there an appetite to look at internationally experienced applicants as well to see if we can broaden what we make available?
It does say internationally educated, but education can come from different methods. It can be at school. It can be from experience. So we consider all of that when we look at them. Doesn't have to be formal education.
But that normally we're talking about the prior learning and assessment process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I thought in Ontario we only recognized education and not experience.
No, that we do for Ontario currently. That may change in a couple of months, but currently that is correct for Ontario residents. So new people to Canada or people from outside of the country, we look at everything.
We look at everything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing there's no other questions, Stephen, would you take this over or would you like me to do this?
Well, no, Amy or Sarah.
Okay, can we get a consensus on the first one, a high five of whether or not we like it?
Sarah, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute. Look at me at the end of the day. Yes, thank you, Robert. I thought I was off mute. We will do a high five for that. We'll do a full motion for all of the items at the end of Robert's report. So let's do a show of high five on the proposed amendments to the internationally educated applicants policy. Okay, and that looks like consensus. Very good. So we'll pass back to you for examination and upgrading, Robert.
Thank you. So next I'd like to present the examination and upgrading policy. The proposed amendments to this policy are streamlining the current process by outlining the path for exam candidates who have made previous unsuccessful examination attempts, as well as candidates with no previous exam attempts. The amended policy also includes detailed steps a candidate must take to regain their eligibility to sit the exams. A draft policy of the proposed changes is included for your consideration as Appendix B. Do we have any questions?
Questions on that piece? Comments?
So this is mostly just a few little tweaks. We found some things that were perhaps not as fair as it could have been. And with COVID, we had timeline restrictions, and in COVID, that kind of didn't fly. So we've made some adjustments to make it more fair for everybody. Okay.
Not seeing any questions, we can move to a high five. See a show of consensus on that item. And that looks good. Okay, so Rob, we'll move to your last piece, retention of legal and verifying documents policy.
Okay, and finally, I'd like to present the retention and legal verifying documents policy. Again, the aim here is to improve the overall readability and comprehension of the document and to ensure that the policy reflects a current document submission process for applicants and registrants. A draft of the policy is included for your consideration as Appendix C.
Questions on this one for Rob? Any feedback, comments? Okay, let's see a show of high five on this policy item. Okay, very good.
So when we were looking at all this, sorry.
No, sorry. I don't know why
just...
this system does this for me. Can I give my high five? My
it's an extra approval.
I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Rob, go ahead.
So the registration committee invested significant time and resources into reviewing and improving registration policies and process with public interest in mind. By reviewing the policies regularly, we want to ensure that the policies remain consistent and effective and are up to date with current regulations and regulatory best practices. And we also look at it for DEI considerations, and we did not identify any concerns at all from a DEI standpoint concerning the policies that were discussed.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any questions or comments related to the public interest considerations or the DEI considerations? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we've already sought consensus on those items. So Stephen, I will pass the floor to you for a full motion.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a lengthy one, so it's that the board approve the proposed amendments to the International Educated Applicants Policy, the Examinations and Upgrading Policy, and the Retention and Verifying Legal Documents Policy as recommended by the Registration Committee. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, Omar.
Omar?
Do I have a seconder?
Sure.
Okay, Alicia?
Alicia? All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Not seeing or hearing. Anyone abstaining from voting? That motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So we'll stay with Rob, Chair of Registration, to present the contact lens monitoring policy.
As you may remember, I don't remember, I wasn't there. In 2020, we had COVID, and the board approved a temporary addendum to the contact lens mentor policy to address the challenges faced by contact lens fits because of the pandemic. The addendum expands the eligibility criteria for a contact lens, allowing instructors who teach contact lens courses in accreditation opticianry program. The addendum has been in place and extended and is set to expire on December 31st of this year. So the committee is cognizant of the challenges that students continue to face in finding preceptors to supervise required rigid contact lens fits. Extending the temporary addendum to the contact lens mentor policy until December 31st, 2024. From the public interest standpoint, the college has a mandate to ensure that it continues to register qualified public or patient safety, and that it does so in a manner that does not create unnecessary or excessive barriers to registration.
Rob?
Yeah.
You have a couple questions here. I'm not sure if you want to wait until the end of your briefing, and we are having a little bit of trouble with your audio. You're kind of going in and out, so I don't know if you want to maybe turn your video off for just for the briefing at least.
Go here, so I may be turning my head, maybe screwing it up a little bit. I'll finish if that's all right.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, finish the briefing, and then we'll do questions.
Okay, the registration committee considered the extension with DEI factors in mind. In the committee's view, this extension will ensure that graduating students can complete the required contact lens fits within a reasonable time frame and subsequently register as opticians. This will balance the need of the new graduates to enter the profession against the need for the college to maintain financial stability by influx of new students. So I will say, so we looked at this, and what we determined is all the information that we have in hand was not enough information for us to do a fulsome and forthright determination. So early next year, we're going to be gathering more information. We perpetuity, but basically we have to do some surveys. We got to get some facts in place. A lot of students have concerns that they can't get mentors. So we have to dig deep a little bit and get some fulsome information so that we can make an informed decision. So yes, this is a little bit of stopgap to give us another year.
Thank you, Rob. So a couple of questions. So let's start with Derek, and then Tanya, and then Samir.
Rob, so, and you hit on at the end there with what I was actually a little bit concerned about as to whether or not we were just taking a COVID issue and wrapping it into a lack of requirement issue anymore, and the fact that rigids are not nearly as popular as they once were, though they seem to be coming back every once in a while. So I don't want to see it done in perpetuity either, forever. But question, are they having the same challenges getting the soft fits? Should we just make this a thing for the rigid side of it?
They seem to be having the problem just with rigid.
Okay.
Seem to be.
It seems to be, right? And I mean, so I understand what we're saying here, but it's like I don't necessarily know that we need to see the teachers, signing off on the soft fits. Yes, apparently the rigids for now until we figure out whether or not we should still have that, what that needs to look like going forward. But can we divide it up? Is there a way to split it, or is that just too onerous?
Fazal, did you have thoughts there?
Sorry, trying to get my unmute. I agree with Rob with sort of a detailed or extensive environmental scan next year. I think it's going to resolve itself. Anecdotally, it's always the rigid fits that are difficult. With the passing of the registration amendments, it'll bring those hard-coded fits out of regulation and into policy. So then we can revisit from time to time what is considered specialty or advanced fitting and change it to reflect the practice environment. Right now with rigid, the number of rigid fits and soft fits all hard-coded into the regulation, we've been bound by that and have had to make workarounds. So I think next year has a lot of good things in store, and especially for the educational community.
And we had that discussion at the...
Sorry, Rob, you keep cutting out.
Anna?
I can hear you.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you right now.
Okay. Anna, we had that discussion at committee. Would you like to share a little bit of that?
Sure, yes. So we discussed that issue going forward, and this is just to cover the basis for the coming year. And then once that quantitative element is going to come out of the regulation and then into the policy, we're planning early next year to reach out to different stakeholder, educational institutions, community partners, employers, and have, apart from the environmental scan, or in addition to the environmental scan, also a bit of a roundtable discussion as to where they want to see those students, and also the challenge also that this is the standard that the programs are currently teaching to. So if we make any changes, so it all is, they become different links of the same chain. So there's a domino effect. So if one change is made, it will affect other parts of that sequence. So for now, the committee made a decision that this provision remains in place for a year, and then the college proactively tackles this issue in reaching out to different groups that have vested interest in this issue, and to see how this can be best addressed going forwards. But once the new regulation passes, that element is going to come out of the regulation and into the policy, at which point we will have the flexibility to work with it.
Part of the thing, Derek, is it's hard to separate hard and soft, and this is just for a limited amount of time. So it was like, let's keep the status quo for the most part, and yeah.
I just didn't want to still be discussing COVID requirements in 2030. That's all.
Sorry, Amy?
I was just going to add kind of what you were just saying, Rob, that it's hard to separate out the soft and the rigid, because the way the contact lens mentor policy is structured right now, you can be approved as soft only or soft and rigid. There isn't an approval mechanism for rigid only right now. So again, because we anticipate that by the end of 2024, there will be a direction. We don't know what that direction will be yet. That it wasn't worth sort of blowing up the whole policy and restructuring it for that purpose. And then hopefully, we'll be able to come back to the board with, what the more long-term solution is going to be.
Thank you. Tanya?
Thank you.
Can you, was it just a portion? I did read this. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Is it a portion that can be signed off by their educator?
No.
Or any of it?
It was any of it.
Okay. And then most of my other questions were answered within that conversation. I think I'm really glad that we're proactively looking at this, because I think there's definitely some changes that need to be made. And I'm just also wondering, will we try to get feedback from actual students on the challenges that they were, or like, will we be able to send the environmental scans to students as well?
It will be a fulsome investigation. We'll include everybody, and we'll go from there, because students definitely have to be a part of it. They're definitely stakeholders.
Okay.
And remember, we were all students, maybe a long time ago. Maybe we'll limit it to recent grads, but I suspect we'll be reaching out. Is that fair, Anna?
Yeah, for sure. And Tanya, just to add to this information that you were requiring, I was working directly with the educational institutions, gathering this information and the challenges that they have been facing. From what I gathered, they don't use it as a sort of a shortcut, but rather as a backup plan. And they take it out if they need to, and whenever they don't need to, they don't use it. So some colleges were able to run workshops on rigid fits. As I understand, the soft, they're successful in placing them with the actual preceptor in the dispensary. But I think they identified that this is a good to have in case they're not able to place the student for the rigid fits.
Sorry, Rob. I'm actually just really glad to hear that, because I remember how hard it was. I was maybe a not so long ago student. I remember how hard it was for me, and that wasn't during COVID times, to find rigid fits. So I appreciate that we're looking at it. That's all. Sorry to cut you off, Rob.
No problems. I mean, the schools, people have problems. The students have a problem. They tell the schools there could be 5 people and they're devastated. There could be 40. We don't have all the information to make an educated decision. So what we decided was, rather than take it out, let's get educated. Let's find out how many are missing it. How hard is it really? Is it a real concern? Is it just some people, or so we have to get to the bottom of it.
Hey, Samira, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still have a question or comment?
No, my question was covered in between, so it's good. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Rob and Anna? Okay, so let's see a show of a high five to move to a motion on this one. Okay, looks like it. So Stephen, we will pass to you for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion is that the board approve the proposed extension to the addendum to the contact lens mentor policy as recommended by the registration committee. Do I have a mover?
See Tanya,
Okay, seconder?
Derek,
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining from voting? Not seeing or hearing anyone, the motion carries.
okay. So that brings us to looking at the approval of the 2024 board meeting dates. So Stephen, I will pass the floor back to you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Yes, we have the briefing note that's in front of you there. The dates are have been in front of executive, and it was approved by executive. And does anyone have any comments or concerns in regard to the proposed dates that are listed for 2024?
Tanya.
I just have a question for the training. Is it like part 1, part 2, or is it either or?
In regards to the orientation dates?
Yeah.
They're
I
part
think-
1, part 2.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Thanks,
yeah,
Tony.
I think we got some feedback that a full day, especially via Zoom, is quite onerous. So especially with newer members, it's a lot to take in. So spreading that over 2 separate days will hopefully ease a little bit of that.
Derek, and then Alicia.
Just with the dates that we've got in mind, there's a couple of half dates in there. I mean, I know the executive committee dates are in there as well. Are we able to figure out whether or not we're looking at full days on some of those things, or whether we're looking at half days or quarter days or what it is? Just when it comes to scheduling for myself, as a freelancer, I'm booking a month or 2 in advance, and it's like, I don't know whether I'm taking the day off or whether I can try and fit in somewhere for a half day or what.
I think like we based the exact dates on the historical of the last almost 2 years now, and they've all been running sort of half day.
Yeah.
Because the scope is so tight on what the executive does look at these days.
Yeah.
And we
So
can figure out whether we're talking morning or afternoon on some of these as well, because with the half dates,
we typically always do morning.
Is it always morning?
Yeah.
I was anecdotally thinking that, but I wasn't certain, so I wanted to check.
Yeah. People just like to get it all done out of the way.
Okay, Alicia and then Rob.
So my question's specific to the orientation dates, but could apply to all the others is, will sessions be recorded if folks are unavailable?
For the most part, and I don't want to speak out of turn, Amy, but for the most part, we could record them. It's sometimes when we have outside speakers, sometimes they're a little particular about their content. So with permission from them, we're happy to record.
Okay.
Rob?
So it was mentioned that we were going to have one board of directors meeting in person. Which one of these would that be?
So the direction that we were given, I guess 2 years ago, was that the June meeting works out the best because weather being agreeable to travel.
June 3rd and 4th.
That's awesome. Can we, when we put them in the boardroom, can we write what they are on them? Thank you.
Sounds good. Good idea. People can start booking.
Any other comments or feedback on the dates? Questions? Okay, so Stephen, I will pass to you for a motion.
Thanks, Sarah. And the motion is to approve the board meeting dates as presented. Do I have a mover?
So Rob
Seconder?
and Kevin?
Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Not hearing or seeing any, the motion carries.
Okay, so Stephen, we're going to stay with you now to hear the 2023 board self-evaluation update.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. It's that time of year again, and the 2023 board and committee self-evaluations are here. Tomorrow afternoon, after the meeting, all board and committee members will receive an email on how to connect and complete the online questionnaire. You will be getting one email for the board and one email for the committee you sit on. The survey will be open for 2 weeks, closing at 11:59 on Wednesday, December the 20th, 2023. And the questionnaire covers the period from January 1st, 2023 to December the 5th, 2023. It will take approximately 30 minutes to complete, depending if you sat on the board or how many committees you participated in. And just a little reminder, should, just one other thing. We will ask that you fill it all in. And if you don't, then you'll be getting a little reminder from myself to please get this done and get them in, because it's important that we, and the policy requires that we have our self-evaluation done. Okay. Thank you for your cooperation.
Okay, so that piece was just for information. So that actually concludes our agenda for today. Stephen, I'll pass to you for some closing notes.
Thanks, Sarah. And I want to remind everybody that the committee chair and vice chair elections will take place tomorrow morning. We'll be meeting at 9:15 for a tech check, and we'll start the elections hopefully right at 9:25. And I think that's my information that I have today, Sarah.
Wonderful. Okay, so with that, just checking, we don't need a motion to close out today. Okay, so with that, that concludes the agenda. A big thanks to everyone. Netta, you have your hand raised. Did you have a comment before we close out?
I just want to confirm that I received an email that I can join in. I think me and Dorina, we can join in at 10:30.
That's right. Yeah, because you won't be on committees next year. You don't have to join for that portion. So that's when the public agenda is going to get going.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for confirming that. Thank you.
Wonderful. So that closes out the day. A big thanks to everyone for a very productive meeting, and another one to come tomorrow. And we will see you all then.
Thanks all.
Okay, thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.